Welcome to the SJ Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and thank you for joining the SJ Child Show today. I have a guest joining me from my neighbor to the north. I'm from Canada, and I'm really excited to have her here today, Kat Newport. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, it's going to be a really great conversation, right up both of our alleys, talking about neurodiversity. And I'd just love to hear more about you and learn how we can support and honor what you're doing in the community. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what got you started in this.
Gotcha. So I am a mother of 4 children, 3 of whom are neurospicy. Won the lottery there. So 3 of whom are neurospicy. I have 2 grandkids, so lots of experience in that realm. But my journey with conflict actually started in the corporate world. I was really young when I got into corporate. I was only 19, just a baby myself, looking back. My gosh. I really didn't have the skills to manage conflict in the workplace. So it became a bit of a passion project for me over the years to figure out how to do this. And then as I moved up in my career, I started working with organizational development, which is training other folks. And I found that conflict was a mystery to most of us. And we all had these narratives from our pasts that, okay, so these are the habits I've built up over the years of how to deal with conflict. And some of them were good, respect. Some of them were really great. And some of them really sucked. So it became a process to try and teach folks and help folks learn how to manage conflict so that their work life was a little bit more calm and chill, and then it translated into their home lives as well. So keeping in contact with those coworkers and clients, and this is completely translatable. And my experience with my own children, I have them ranging in ages from 28 to 9. So just oops.
Hey, we have 24 to 12. So hey,
there you go. So it was, it was teaching conflict when I was a young mother to my 28-year-old versus teaching conflict to my 9-year-old. Hugely different, and how they interact with people and how empathetic they are, and respect to my oldest. But just as I evolved, I was more able to teach these skills, and the way they relate to other people is so different and so much more refined, I find, in the 9-year-old than when I didn't have the skills to teach my 28-year-old.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I mean, even I love that we have those things in common. And I just became a grandma a couple weeks ago for my first time. So thank you. I have a stepdaughter who's 24, and then my 2 bio kids are 14 and 12. So I completely get that gap in age raising kids and everything. What do you find as far as, and of course, everybody's going to be unique and individual as their own people and selves, but what do you find for your oldest? Is she glad that you are now in a place where you are kind of being able to do this, or does she have resentments towards anything in that manner? Only because I think mine does have that situation. And so I'm kind of interested to, how did that look for you?
So what she's finding, because she's a fairly new mom, my oldest grandchild is not even 3 yet. He'll be 3 in July. And, she's just had another one. He's under 6 months old. So she's starting to walk that journey of motherhood. And she's like, oh my gosh, now I know why you did what you did. Very satisfying as a parent, going, okay, I wasn't totally crazy. And she's seeing how I've dealt with her brothers over the years. And again, the first 2 are fairly close together. Then there's a 10-year gap. Then there's a 10-year gap. So just seeing how that relationship has evolved and how I've evolved as a parent, I can see that coming out with her. So she's like, Mommy, how do I deal with this? Mama, how do I do this? Mama, what do you suggest? So there's definitely a closer relationship as she's become a mother and looking for that guidance. So I wouldn't say there's resentment, but there is recognition that there is an evolution in parenting.
Good. And like I said, it's so individual, and there's different struggles that have occurred. And so I think that that's where some of the stuff comes from. And I think when you are a mixed family and you go between families and they have different values, it's kind of hard to sometimes know where your values lie and how to create them for yourselves. And so her journey will, like you said, start now to kind of start creating that for her own family. And so hopefully she'll see the importance and see the value in creating better just knowledge. When you know better, you do better, right? Overall, you should be doing that. And so, but I do see what a difference it's made in my own parenting of, my own two, and the youngest, how it's almost like, let's try to do everything differently than we did before, and I think it's had like its own success and its own failures, which I think just parenting in general, you can't be a perfect mom, but there's a million ways to be a good one. I just posted that the other day. I love that. And isn't that the truth? Because we just really show up with what we have. And how do you start to teach conflict resolution? And what do you think is a good age to start teaching about that?
So teaching conflict resolution starts from the minute they start watching you manage conflict. So pretty early. So how you manage conflict is going to inform the narratives that your kids eventually carry forward. So it's definitely not do as I say, not as I do. It's definitely they're going to do as you do. So if you're a bit of a hot reactor, you get really upset and then you raise your voice, anticipate that coming back at you in some form. And I'm sure we're all parents. We've all experienced that. So I use the SMART model for teaching conflict to adults, but it's totally transferable into children because it's self-reflective. It's how are you showing up? How are you feeling? Take that body scan. What are you thinking? And how do you want to move forward with that? So definitely using that SMART model and teaching those skills early on is going to save a lot of problems for you as a parent. But as that child moves on in life and gets into the workplace, I mean, I'm a mediator as well. I've come across so many unhealthy conflicts and conflict coping skills that, where do we have that disconnect? So if you can build that in before they even launch into university or trades or what have you, they're going to be more successful and a lot more self-composed and a lot less stress ridden.
Yeah. And, I think for my family, I think it's important to look at, kind of tangible, like, what do we do? Like, what does that mean? And I think for us, I can see in patterns in the past where they were a little bit more, I love that you said a hot reactor. That was a great way to put it. And I realized, especially with my nonverbal kiddo, that there was no amount of raising voices or any of that was going to make any kind of difference and or benefit this child's growth and development in any way. And he's my first biological child, our second, raising. And so it was kind of like, oh, okay, wait, what are we doing? we need to learn something new. And in those skills, like you said, we were able to grow and learn. And then we really were able with the youngest to access those conversations rather than explosive behaviors and explosive conversations. They were just really meaningful conversations. And we started to see, well, this is so nice. Like, we want to set this up for this human being to be able to understand that no amount of yelling at people really has results, not positive ones. And really, yeah, nothing much comes of it. But when you get to the root of things, when you are able to really look at things and break them down, and accountability, right? I think that's a big part of it, is that accountability piece for everyone, not just the one individual who, as a parent, the child who might have made a mistake, and, but you, I think right then and there, also need to be accountable for your behavior and your actions when you're in those conversations with your child. And I love how you said it does. I'm sure so many people that are listening right now can relate to having workplace conflict. I know I've been the victim of some pretty mean paralegals and executive secretaries that have just really put their on me. And so, and I'm kind of a pushover. So it's, one of those soft people that just gets a lot of walk on. But, I wish back then I would have understood how to even comprehend or even start a conversation about any of that. I didn't know, like you said, as an early 20-year-old, how to even not just crawl under my desk and hide.
Yep.
So while we're kind of walking in this journey, what are some self-practices we can start to make to help us kind of get to a place where we can be better conflict resolutioners?
Absolutely. So I love the 5 steps of SMART. So SMART conflict, again, talked about it being self-reflective. So the first step is really understanding the situation. So that's where the S comes in. This is really more than, well, Sarah, you made me angry. There's a lot more to the situation than that. and really getting to the core of it. Why are you upset? I'm upset because this didn't work. Well, why does that make you upset? Because that didn't work. So really focusing on that event or that situation that's causing that conflict or difference of perspective. Go beyond the obvious. The next one is M, which is measuring those emotions. We need to have those self-soothing techniques. It's not your job to make me feel better if I'm angry. It's my job to make me feel better when I'm angry. So we need to start teaching those self-soothing techniques fairly early on and give people permission to hit the pause button. If I'm too upset, either crying or really sad and then going nonverbal or getting really angry and not able to articulate my thoughts, I've got to be allowed to hit the pause button, as opposed to, no, you're going to sit here and you're going to talk to me till we hash this out. That's not going to help. So really that pause button until it's time that those emotions have calmed down or soothed a little bit. We're no longer in that hot reaction or that burdened backpack state, and we can move forward positively. A, how do you want this to look when it's over? What's the agenda? Mm-hmm. And this is not the bad agenda. This is like a mending agenda, that I would really like to see this problem solved this way. And we're talking high executive function here. So this is about teaching children. So what do you want to happen when you have this conversation with your friend? Do you want to go back out and play with them, or do you not want to play with them today? Having that conversation and giving them the choice on how they want the problem to be solved. And this is the primary skill set you're going to need for eventually negotiation in a corporate environment or a work world, or when you want to get your car fixed and you got to negotiate with a mechanic,
right?
All sorts of places. So that's the A. R is the core of it all. This is relationships. Conflict is relational. If you weren't in a relationship with anybody, you wouldn't have a conflict. And relationships are deep, like you have with your kids, or they're superficial, like you have with your mechanic. So it's all relational. So what do you want that relationship to look like after the conflict is over? If I drop my basket here and scream at my kid, what does my relationship look like after? So look at that relationship. And the T is the easiest, the time and place. Hit that pause button. Do you need some privacy? Is this in front of the siblings? Is this in front of their classmates or on the playground? Get some privacy so the ego's not involved. It helps take a little bit of that edge off, that emotions. Is it bedtime? I know I don't make some great decisions when I'm cranky. Are we hungry? When I'm hangry, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. I think it was the Gottmans that said, don't go to bed angry has ended more marriages than it has actually saved. You've got to be in that right frame of mind to have that conversation. So use smart, get smart with kids. Yeah, you can use those smart steps to start building those skills. Age appropriate, of course, because there's different increments. But I look at my 9-year-old now, and man, he's going to be a UN negotiator by the end of this. He's doing things that his sister wasn't doing at 16. When he turns 16, I'm in so much trouble.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth, too? And these younger ones, there's not enough to be said for the era of information that they're in and the exposure of it, and we couldn't possibly understand the amount of processing that their brains do on a daily basis with all the information they're being fed, and it's such short increments. I don't know that valuable information can actually be shared or saved in that amount of time. I don't know. Maybe so. Maybe they found some data that can show me that. But I think that it's also, we almost have to follow once in a while, and maybe not in conflict, because we have way more experience than they do there. But in learning and in understanding, okay, well, what tools are you using? How can we kind of use those same tools with you to help negotiate this? Because a lot of conflicts are probably happening via text these days. And how can we really understand or even help in that situation? How can we help a child learn how to correctly communicate in a communication form that we're not used to using?
When we're talking about conflict, I want to drag it back to the point that conflict is relational. And relationships, yes, we're going more digital. I mean, we're sitting here in 2 different countries talking to one another. Relationships do go digital. But when we're dealing with texts or emails or voicemail messages, we're losing a lot of the communication that goes along with it, particularly in emotionally heated discussions. So when we're dealing with conflict and I send you a text saying, I'm really mad at you because of this, you're not going to get my emotions and my tone of voice. You're not going to get my inflections. You're going to read it with your tone of voice and your inflections. So if you have a really good headspace for me right now, it's like, oh, I really want to be friends with Kat. I really want to work this out. You're going to read it one way. If you're really angry with me, you're going to read it a different way with a different tone of voice. So making sure that information is conveyed to the child and that they understand that firing off a text may create a little more drama than they're expecting. That the best of intentions across a text or the best of intentions in an email are going to be one thing, but how it's received is completely different. So those difficult conversations need to be had face to face as best as possible, video to video, to get that nuance in it. One other thing I'd like to kind of tack on to the end of that, you were talking about social media and getting those messages in. And when I started my passion project with conflict, I started seeing a lot of messaging on social media that showed very unhealthy conflict styles. the road rage videos, the videos of I'm going to go bug my partner, I'm going to go start a conflict with my partner because I'm bored. These are really unhelpful conflict messages. And unfortunately, it's the algorithm that picks it up and throws it in front of you again and again and again and again. So one thing we need to do as parents is really reinforce that message that if you're looking for good conflict information on how to handle conflict well, you're going to want to, I'm not interested in this, so just get that one off the algorithm and start looking at those healthy conflict things. And that takes time to teach the computer what you want to see, right? To teach that logarithm. So
feed your feed. That's what I say.
Yes, very much so. So there's two parts to this, making sure that we understand that it is relational and technology takes some of that relationship out of it. So really understand what you want out of that relationship and be careful of the messages you're eating about conflict, because that can really skew your view on what conflict should be.
Now, how do we, when we're kind of worked with the little ones and then they're growing and now we have these teenagers that have their own independent autonomy, everything, how do we kind of keep them in check with checking in with their emotions, checking in and not going or not being maybe victim to their emotions? How do we help our teenagers?
So this is about keeping that conversation open and keeping that safe space. So we're talking about a linear kind of conflict here, and we always talk about conflict resolution, which is the middle step. We never really talk about conflict mitigation and conflict restoration, because we're talking about a relationship. So what's your relationship like that's keeping you out of conflict with your teenager? Then how you deal with the conflict in the moment, and then how are you restoring that relationship with your teenager after you have that difference of perspective? So we really have to think of this on a relational level, not just the flashpoint. So are you a safe person for this individual, for your teenager to come to? Are you opening the door to communication? Do you know how to deal with some of the more difficult conflict types, those who go silent? I had a silent one. I think that was the hardest one for me. I could deal with the yelling. I couldn't deal with the burden backpack where they would just shut down, right? Making sure that you leave space for them, that you leave it open, that you don't drop the conversation just because they shut down. Really understanding these different styles. Are they a hot reactor? How do we put that into space? Are we having a conversation here, or what are we doing? Are you trying to hurt me, or are we trying to solve the problem? Really highlighting the behaviors, but in a empathetic and loving way. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm the stop your crying or I'll give you a reason to cry generation. You want a burden backpack and somebody who doesn't know how to deal with their emotions? There's been a lot of processing over the years.
Yeah.
As parents, we really have to teach that. Okay, you're upset, you're crying. How can I support you in this moment? Do you need space? Do you need a cuddle? What do you need? Do you need it? What do you need?
Yeah.
And moving forward, but never letting the topic drop. And that's another challenge I see a lot when we come to conflict conversations, is that, okay, you're yelling at me, I'm out. You do you. And we never really get back to that conversation. We never really get back to that conflict and resolve it. So we end up carrying around this big bag of unresolved conflict because we don't want to rock the boat, because we don't want to make them upset, because we want to be the good parent, because we, all these reasons. So what's your relationship like? And think mitigation, resolution, restoration.
I love that. Just recently we had kind of that same thing where the child just shut down and there was no space, there was no communication happening. And it wasn't until later that, my husband and I were talking about it, and he kind of questioned, if we would have kept going, maybe it wouldn't have been meaningful. Maybe the reason that they're not discussing it is because they want to have a meaningful something to say afterwards. And in that moment, they were just being force-fed information and feeling like they were going to force spit it out. And it wasn't conductive to, or, productive to the situation. It was more maybe still in that pause space instead of, taking it off and letting it go. So I really like that you said that. And I like that he recognized that maybe if it came at the time that they were wanting to talk about it, it would be meaningful for them. And that would be more of a progress and a successful kind of like restoration. I like that you said mitigation and restoration, because those things are true. Those things aren't as looked at as the actual talking about it part. So that it's so important that we try to learn all of these things to help all of our relationships, because truly, I don't know that there is a relationship that hasn't had a conflict. And if not, then I don't know that you really care for that person. You might want to look at that. I think, and of course we have, our friends and our family and our work people and all of these different levels of relationships that we need to have. Do we also need to have different levels of conflict? Or like you said, can it just be kind of unilaterally used with everyone?
So when we're talking about relationships, we want to look at the depth. And depending on the closeness, the depth, and then the amount of time you spend with somebody changes how conflict's going to impact you. So if you get the wrong coffee from the barista, that's a conflict. You're having a conflict. I need the right coffee. I really need my almond mocha this morning. But it's very easy to go up to the barista and say, you gave me the wrong drink. Can you please replace it? There's not a huge emotional load here. We don't usually even classify this as a conflict, but it's a classic conflict. When we start getting into conflicts at work, you spend 40 hours a week around these people. They're not deep relationships. They may be, but they're not typically deep relationships. But just the sheer amount of time that you have to look at their faces causes a larger emotional impact. So how you handle those conflicts becomes a little bit more important than with the barista. You've really got to understand that situation. You've really got to understand what that relationship needs to look like. I'm going to spend the next 38 hours together with this person if we have a conflict on Monday morning. So how do you want that week to go? And then we get into family. We may not see them as much as we see coworkers, but these are deep, vulnerable relationships. So how do you want that to look? Really understanding that situation, focusing on that time and place, really investing a lot of empathy and emotion into it. And I love talking about the idea of winning and losing when it comes to these more intimate relationships. And the key here is, do you want to win this argument, or do you want to have a good relationship with your child? If you're going in saying, I want to win, I'm your mother and I said so. If you're going in because you want to win, be prepared to lose something on the relationship front. You're going to lose somewhere else. Conflict is about building a relationship and moving forward. It is not about winning and losing.
I love that you said that. So important for so many, and especially for parents that might not know how to start. Like, look at that. I think that that's a beautiful relationship kind of mantra, if you will, to look at and to decide, do you want to win or do you want to lose? I like that a lot. I'm going to tell my husband so he can tell his coworkers about that. I think he goes and kind of is like the Gandhi of all of the the Buddha of the people. He brings all of they all sit and listen. Okay, what should we do? So yeah, good on him for doing that. What kind of support do you offer as far as through like workshops or individual coaching? What does that look like?
So I do a few things, all related to conflict and relationships. So I do one-on-one coaching. So if you are a little bit muddled on what the next steps are and how to apply SMART to yourself before you engage in relationships and conflicts in your relationships, so that one-on-one coaching can help you unpack either in general or specific challenges. I do offer workshops for corporations to build a common language around conflict. When we're talking about different things, when we talk about conflict and you think of it one way and I think of it another, we're already behind. So these workshops give you the base, the language, the skill set, and then we can do team coaching and individual coaching to help apply those into the workplace. I also offer mediation predominantly with estate matters, but I also do other things. So dealing with families pre and post bereavement, about how to manage that estate, how to deal with the huge emotions that go along with that. Throwing money on it is like throwing fuel on a fire. And of course, these long-standing relationships that do finally come to a head when there's this huge transition that comes in life. So I do that as well. So lots of things.
Definitely lots of things. And where can we go to find out more about you and support you? Do you have a website and social medias, all the good stuff?
All the good stuff. So the website is www.smartconflictbook.com. You can get that book on Amazon as well. But the website, www.smartconflictbook.com. I'm really busy on LinkedIn, so you can catch tips, tricks, hints, and additional information on my LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, not so much. I'm still a little shaky on the platform, as well as Facebook. And I do have a YouTube channel. And all of those you can find me under Kat Newport.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to go check out your website and your YouTube and get on there and just share the information. I know that it's definitely a topic that everyone needs to have some more skill sets in. So we appreciate you sharing how to be a better conflict resolutioner and manager and all of the things. So yeah, wonderful. And thank you so much for your time today and willingness to come and share.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.